The next way that you can modify light is by reflecting it, also known as bouncing it. And so the types of things that reflect light are things like umbrellas, and technically beauty dishes reflect the light. And so a basic way to reflect light would be to add a reflector. The biggest difference is the shape of that modifier. The shape of the modifier that bounces or reflects that light changes the way that the light is focused. It changes the way that it spills over the scene. So I'm going to start off here with some direct light on the face, and then I'm going to bounce or reflect it. And we're going to talk about what bouncing and reflecting the light does. All right, so let's get direct light first. Okay, so as we know, direct light, hard, contrasty, all of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab just a regular reflector. This one happens to be a medium size, 33 inches. And we're going to bounce the light into a white reflector and then into silver. So let's start with the white. All right, so I'm going to turn my light around and point it back into the reflector. Okay. And I know because of the way light works, if I have my reflector way back here, it's going to be small compared to the size of her face. So I want to bring it up closer so the light will be softer. The other thing that I could do is I could use a large reflector, because a large reflector will make it larger compared to the size of her face. So instead of using the smaller reflector, I could reflect the light or bounce the light into a V-flat or into a large white wall. Both of those approaches are bouncing or reflecting light. So let's bring this in nice and close. And I want to make sure I have some room for the light to spread out and actually use some of that reflector. All right, so let's try there. And I have no idea what the power of the light is going to be. I was at F11, so let's take a meter reading and see how much light got cut down. All right, so I'm at F7. Okay, so I'm going to open up from 11 to 7. Okay, so taking a look at this shot, what you'll see is it's definitely softer light than direct light, but it's not super soft. Well, why is that? In this case, I'm bouncing into a white reflector, so it should be softer than if I were bouncing it into silver. Silver is going to be more specular. And the reason is if you compare the size of the light source to the size of my subject, it's not that big. So I can bring the reflector in closer to make it bigger, or I could switch to that bigger reflector. So what this means for you is, let's say you've got two umbrellas. Umbrellas reflect or bounce the light. And you've got a small white umbrella. Small white umbrella is going to give you softer light than a small silver umbrella. But if you grab the big white umbrella, that's going to give you softer light than the small white umbrella. So as you're looking through your modifier choices, know that it's not like, oh, it's reflecting light, it's going to do one thing. You've got to look at the material it's reflecting, silver or white, and you've got to look at the size. So if you want really soft light, go with white and really big. If you want it to be more specular, go with smaller or silver. Also, if you wanted to make your own modifier out of reflecting the light, you have to actually worry about the placement of the light. So right now, the light is bouncing and giving her split light. It's only really lighting half of her face. So if I want it to light more from the front, I've got to move it around for the front to get the angles correct. Because you can absolutely do this if you don't own any modifiers. All right, so I'm going to move it around to the front. Same idea. Just get a little bit of better directional light on the face. All right, so now I have a softer light source on the face. Let's switch it around to silver to see the difference. All right, and you can actually see it with your eye. It's already more specular. Highlights are brighter, shadows are darker. And you see that definition to the shadow on the left-hand side of the face a little bit more. So if you look, you got more contrast. Shadows are harder, highlights are brighter. So in both of these examples, I've used the exact same size reflector. White was softer, silver was harder, but I know if I go bigger, I'll get even softer. So instead of going and grabbing a V-flat, or instead of going and grabbing a big white reflector, a big silver reflector, I'm going to use what I have available to me, which in this case is a big white wall. And it's not even a big flat white wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the light into that wall, and I know I'm going to need to turn up the power, because what's happening is as the light travels over distance, it falls off, it spreads, and then it's got to bounce that whole distance back to my subject. But I know that whatever the light source bounces off of, it becomes that size. So if I bounce it off of a wall and give it plenty of time to spread out, it's going to be a huge light source, which means it's going to be really, really soft. All right, so let me remove my smaller reflectors. I'm going to turn this around, pump up the light into the wall. And I know it's got a long distance to travel, so I'm going to need a lot more power out of it. And I can meter it so that I have some idea of what to set my camera at. I turn the power way up, so it should help compensate a bit. All right. Ooh, yeah, all right. 12.7, so let me just turn it down a little bit. I'm aiming for f11. All right, perfect. So now this should be a lot softer light. Okay. Okay, great. Now, the way that it's pointed is it's pointed directly into that wall. So I'm actually going to point it a little bit further this way so it's not so split light. If I point it directly into the wall beside her, it's going to only light that side of her face. I'm going to point it forward a little bit more, and then I might move her head to face that direction. I do this often with V-flats, so I have a little bit more control than just with a wall. Let's see. Beautiful. I mean, so you can see it is really, really soft light. I'm just going to turn you a little bit to the side. Good. Now she's facing the light source, and it's just beautiful, even, soft. And I'm not really even using a modifier at all, but I am, because the wall is my modifier. So if you are shooting in a small white space and you want a giant white reflector, you can point that light into the wall. Just know if the wall is to this side, the light is going to bounce right back at your subject. So you may need to change the angle of your set or change the angle of your subject's face. But whatever the light bounces or reflects off of, so this is reflected light, it'll take the qualities of what it's bouncing off of. So if you have a blue wall or a green wall, you can't bounce it off of that, or it's going to give you those color tones. And if you're using a white reflector versus a silver reflector, or a white umbrella versus a silver umbrella, all of those things make a difference.